Sanibonani, Dumelang, good evening, and welcome to episode 412 of the Private Property Podcast. I'm your host, uMaStandi Khumalo. If you join us for the first time, welcome to the family. You tune into the leading property podcast in South Africa, also the only one that caters to your property needs. You want to make sure that you follow us across our social media pages when you want to get your finger on the pulse on all things property, whether you're on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, and of course also on TikTok. Do make sure that you follow us across our social media pages and of course always engage with us. I'm at Zamantunga_K on Twitter as well as on Instagram, always tackling hot property issues. Well, this evening we're talking about one of my favorite topics, and I know you at home know this one, and that is of course some of the opportunities in the township property market. I absolutely love talking about this one because I think it's one of those untapped opportunities that if really great property entrepreneurs get right, really could change quite a lot for so many of us. And to get a better understanding of, the township property market, some of the opportunities there, and really how uMaStandi in particular is playing a role in certainly financing property entrepreneurs. This evening I'm joined by Simnikwe Ntyantya, who's a credit analyst at uMaStandi, which is a member of Tuff 21. Simnikiwe, good evening, and thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. Good evening.
It's such a pleasure to have you with us. Now, I think, Simnikiwe, one of the great things, I've spoken to some of your colleagues and viewers at home know that the township property market is probably one of my favorite topics to actually explore. Before we even go at looking at some of the opportunities, mistakes, and the risk and all those kinds of things, let's perhaps look at uMaStandi. What is uMaStandi? I know many people buy uMaStandi as you are the landlord, uMaStandi, and unendlu yakho kalisicathulo sakho umuntu mamela wena. But when we talk about uMaStandi in the context of, the company, what is uMaStandi and what exactly does it do?
Okay. uMaStandi is the company that backs the uMaStandi. So uMaStandi is a property financing institution that's concentrated in financing property entrepreneurs in townships around South Africa. We are now in three provinces: the Western Cape, Gauteng, and most recently KZN. And we finance property entrepreneurs who are looking to buy or build rental units for investment purposes.
And I think when we look at, looking to buy or build investment properties, we'll go through the criteria right now. I want to find out from our viewers at home if we're now uMaStandi and uMaStandi Ekasi, right? Because we're looking at township properties in particular. Another time we'll certainly have some of your colleagues at Tuff when we look at the inner city projects that I know Tuff finances. Perhaps a quick distinction of, Tuff for those who may know of Tuff, because we're obviously talking Tuff 21, and the difference, of course, with uMaStandi.
Okay. So Tuff 21 and Tuff are part of the Tuff group of companies. uMaStandi, Tuff 21 has always been part of the Tuff group of companies, but since last year, 2021 April, we established our own brand as Tuff 21 to concentrate on the newer areas and the township, specifically the township market. We're really looking to back real people, bring real solutions to real people and real problems, and in new areas. Tuff is already established in the inner city areas, and uMaStandi is establishing itself in more the township area.
And when I look at the explanation around backing uMaStandi and the people who finance uMaStandi, and every time I've even spoken to your colleagues, one of the things that I always highlight is how when you walk into Tuff or when you set up an appointment, they first want to know about you. They're not looking at, what's the deal you're financing, are the numbers stacking up. It's almost from the get-go. They're looking at the person. They want to have a conversation with Simnikwe. Perhaps just take us through, I'll say the philosophy around that, because I know when you are not used to it, and I wasn't used to it. A couple of years back, I actually went and I sat with your colleagues, and I want to say in that hour-long conversation, the first actually conversation I had with them was all about me. It wasn't even about, send us the property deal, what's the OTP. It was none of that. We only got to that at a much later stage. And it was quite surprising for me that a financier would take that kind of interest in you as an individual first than, first looking at, okay, do your numbers stack up? Does the deal actually make sense?
No, you're quite right. I think more than anything, the Tuff group of companies, we're really people-based. Our products are really made to solution some of the problems that some of the solutions that are for the people, or some of the problems that we have in the market. Really, we finance our property entrepreneur, but we really want that housing outcome even for us. So for uMaStandi specifically, we even provide training, mentorship for our property entrepreneurs who come to us. Most of our entrepreneurs don't know much about property entrepreneurship, and we provide training, mentorship for our established entrepreneurs, guidance, and we really try to know why you want to do what you do. What your idea is, and where we can come in to assist you there, where your loopholes are, and how we can best assist you, I guess.
Now, Simnikiwe, I want us then to look at what kinds of, let's call it, projects that uMaStandi finances, especially for those at home who perhaps want to find out what their criteria might be. Maybe they already have a property that meets the criteria, or they want to buy one that might meet the criteria.
Oh, thanks for that. So uMaStandi has a range. It was initially established for the more backyard rentals, but we've seen that there's a lot of opportunity in the township areas. People are doing more macro scale products more than anything. We fund those people who may have property already. Maybe you've moved into the suburb. I was telling you right before this. Maybe you've moved into the suburb. We've had a lot of clients who maybe their parents owned houses in the suburbs, and they're sitting there with no one using them, and they use those properties to create rental properties, and they generate income and increase value of those properties. We also finance entrepreneurs who want to buy maybe land or buy existing properties to demolish those properties, or existing rental units in the township market. So we really go for, as long as your aim is to create rental income or to be a property investor and create multi-let rental units within the space.
You know, one of the things, Miguel, I like about you is that you looking at the credit, you're a credit analyst. And I think more often than not, we don't have an appreciation, even when we're applying, for instance, for a home loan. And our home loans get rejected. Oftentimes, you'll hear the consultant say, "Look, we're going to send it to credit," and the credit team will then come back to us. Things are always being sent to the credit team. Every time you've ever had to deal with, a bank and any kind of financing, things will always land up at the credit team. Perhaps take us through the work that the credit team actually does, because I think we still don't quite have an appreciation for what are some of the, let's call it, the thinking process that the credit team actually then uses when assessing a lot of our applications, whether it's for personal home loans, of course, or in this case, you want to bring, a property that you want uMaStandi to finance.
So for a credit team, we look at more the feasibility of the project. The main focus is to know that will the property or that proposed idea be able to pay its operating expenses, municipalities, if it has workers, maintenance, all of those. Will it be able to service the uMaStandi loan, and will it be able to give the entrepreneur money back? We at uMaStandi, we finance against the property itself or the potential rentals of the properties. So we want to know that the entrepreneur is going to get some sort of income from the onset on our side. So I think people generally don't look at that. Most of the time, if clients come to me or come to our offices, I try to teach them just small ways of how to look at these things, how to calculate the value of the property, how to look at what the potential income of the property would be, how much they would use for operating expenses, just a round figure of what the uMaStandi loan would that be feasible for them. I think just to simplify it is really looking at those things.
And I think it's one of those, probably those nuggets that we sometimes struggle with, right? The understanding those small things that you need to be mindful of, even from application stage. And I think I want us to have a look at that. When we look at, and we'll look at the red flags as the credit team, what are the green flags? So when somebody, is bringing a deal, especially from an uMaStandi perspective, what are the things that when this appears on an application or a person has this kind of background, is there a certain set of green flags that as a credit team you would typically look out for?
I think it's really understanding the market that you want to finance in. I think we all have like ideas. People will be like, oh no, especially New Year's resolution, January, everyone has, they want
Hashtag
to
property
build.
goals. Yeah. You want
So
to
just-
build,
yes.
extend in my room.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now
yeah.
you listen to the podcast and you're like, we're going to go to the township, but you haven't taken the time to really marry. This is a 15-year, especially property is a fixed asset.
Yeah.
And for us, it's a 15-year relationship. We always say it's a marriage. It's a marriage. It's not a honeymoon phase. We're not dating. We are marrying you, right? So just understanding the market that you want to operating in, understand what the demand is for do they want bachelors? Are they young professionals? Is the space for young professionals there? What are the potential rentals that you can achieve from that? And with understanding those and understanding basically how the market operates, you'll know how much you need to inject in order to derive the best value from your investment, I guess. I think just taking the time to understand the asset, to understand the market that you want to operate in. And I think more than anything, clients who are also willing to learn. We provide a lot of that for uMaStandi. I think it's really one of our main focuses to also just teach the client, to teach our entrepreneurs, to get them, to upskill them, to allow them to really go through the entire value chain of a property, understand town planning, understand equity and financing, understand property management and all of that. And if we have that, I think really those are our biggest green flags more than anything. I think those would probably be our biggest.
I am this evening in conversation with Simnikwe Ntyantya. We're looking at opportunities in the township property market. And as she's highlighted, certainly from an uMaStandi perspective, property is not umjolo, it's marriage.
Exactly.
And so it's not the courting stage, asijoli, says jolile, balobolile, ukanile, and we're now emendweni. And so when you take that kind of, perspective to property, you really do reprioritize things. You need to understand what the small picture, but also what the big picture is. And you also know what you need to fight and what battles you need to focus on, really similarly to what many people, I'm sure, in marriage go through. I think when I look at one of the things that you train people on, Simnikiwe, that I actually want us to touch on, because I think this is one that trips us so much, especially those who are looking to go into the township property market and exploring building quality apartments in the back rooms, is understanding town planning. So when we look at understanding town planning, perhaps just take us through some of the key things that those who are looking to buy a property for the purposes of, whether demolishing the house that's there and building slightly luxury rooms or back rooms, what do they need to know top of mind around town planning and zoning and really building that kind of structure basically in a residential area?
I think that's probably one of the most important things to understand, especially when buying a property, understanding what the zoning is. So just to explain what zoning is, every area has specific rights that they have. For instance, to create a community, you need to have a school, a business, and maybe houses, right? And some areas, like more the inner city, you'll be able to build, because it was previously businesses, you'll be able to build more multi-let units, sky rise, and all of those. For more the township areas, we are more restricted. Gauteng, we've seen more favorable zoning, like Soweto. We have mostly residential 3, which means that you can build up to probably 2 stories, and you can build multi-units. And some areas such as the Western Cape, we still are exploring KZN. You're restricted. You can build a house and maybe a flat for someone to stay in the backyard. So understanding that, and understanding that should the property be zoned incorrectly, understanding maybe when you are trying to buy a property, walk with an architect. Understand what the zoning is. What can you build in that property? Yes, you want to build 16 units. Are you able to build? How much will it cost for you to actually change the zoning and rechange the town planning? And even when you are approaching uMaStandi, not getting finance maybe until you get the correctly zoned property, in order to not really, because the more the minute that you draw some money, that incurs interest. So getting those basic works done before actually building the property and starting that property entrepreneurship journey, I think it's the most important question really to look at when you are buying a property is to ask what the zoning is. Speak to a professional, check if that zoning will allow you to build the kind of units you want to build and what the process would be in order to change it should it not to be that.
And more of your questions and comments at home, we're taking them on our Facebook page, talking all things township property. I'm in conversation with Simnikwe Ntyantya, who is from uMaStandi, which is a member of the Tuff 21. We've got Simnikwe Ntyantya checking in with Albina Appertain. And we've got a great question here coming through from Umakanya Tando, asking what's the interest rate when buying a property? So and this is, I'll scale it, I'll zone it into when working with uMaStandi. How do you then go about determining what the interest rate that's going to be charged on that facility?
So we are risk adjusted in how we calculate our interest rate. We look at it's like a lot of things like the market, the complexity of what you're trying to do, what your background is, and what your property management background would be in that. But we range from, we JIBAR linked, but it equates to about prime plus 4.5. Prime is 7.5 right now, so it would be around 12%. Percent right now, but that's an average. But we are more risk adjusted in how we deduce our interest rates.
And I think that's something that you have to be mindful of, especially as we're certainly operating from a place where we have low interest rates, but we know they're going to go up, and we saw them going up last week, and we know they're going to keep steadily increasing. Understanding the numbers becomes such a crucial thing. I think oftentimes people trip up when it comes to numbers, where you think a property makes sense, you run your numbers only based off the potential income that you think you're going to get, and not factoring in all the associated expenses when it comes to home ownership, and especially even when you're now managing your small development, because you might do a small development, a few rooms, you're going to have more than one tenant. So sometimes starting small does help, starting with one tenant that you can put into perhaps, a back room that you currently have before you go seeking finance, because you certainly do flex certain muscles when you learn about how to even manage a tenant, and the relationship of tenant and landlord, and the dynamic of even living with people who are not your family, they're not your friends, they're your tenant, but they must still make time on time. They must still make rent on time every single month. So those are some of the things that we always have to be mindful of. And of course, later on this evening, we're going to be looking at this evening's fun fact. And I love it because it's actually very apt for tonight's episode, given that we have two women in studio this evening. So you certainly want to look forward to that fun fact. Now, Simnikiwe, we were looking at the green flags earlier, when it comes to what the credit team, when you look at somebody's application, what would then the red flags be? Because I think we want to now ensure people don't make these mistakes. So you may have the passion for property, and perhaps you may even have a relative background, but when your application goes in, or even when they go in for an interview or the conversation, you find that there are still, unfortunately, some red flags. What would you say those red flags are?
I think one we've just spoken about now, the zoning, which is extremely important, and it's one of the first things that we asked on uMaStandi because of our areas of finance, and I think also equity. So we do need skin in the game. When someone wants a loan from us, you need to be as passionate about it financially.
Because the money, the world, what's that? The whole thing about money making the world go round?
Yeah, but it's 20% equity contribution. So if, for instance, you want to build a 5 million loan, you need to then at least have 1 million to put in as equity for that. But also, I think for us, for uMaStandi, we do concentrate on really turning those red flags into green flags. We understand that our entrepreneur may not be the most advanced in property finance, and we take you through that. Even the numbers, we take you through that. Look at the prices of the property that you want to go in. If you're going to demolish a property, you want to buy low, and you want to be able to build to increase the value when you are building the units, I guess. And I think those are really the first red flags that I can think of. Top of mind.
We've got a great question coming through here from another follow-up question from Makanya Tando asking, does the duration of the loan affect the interest rate? So typically, take us through the typical loan term for uMaStandi. Would it be the same as what many people are used to, with the commercial banks of 20 or sometimes even a 30-year period? And does that affect then the interest rate that gets charged?
Okay. So the interest rate is JIBAR linked. We fund for 15 years, so that's 180 months. So of course, because the JIBAR fluctuates all the time, so then obviously it's going to change through that. But really, it's more steady. The base rate is going to be steady over the time, but JIBAR may change then over time.
And I think, before we even go to some of the questions and some of the comments from our viewers at home, I want us to then look at perhaps if you do have any, let's call it success stories, from some of the people who've accessed funding from uMaStandi that you can perhaps share. Maybe the area that you were saying earlier that one of the areas that you doing really well in is Soweto. Perhaps share with us some of the people, how they've been able to transform certain parts of Soweto. I've seen some of the great projects uMaStandi has financed, so it's been quite great tracking some of those property entrepreneurs.
I feel like uMaStandi is a success story. The whole idea is a success story. Like, I think I always say I'm so privileged to see the type of work that we do and to see it through in our clients. We've had clients who come in, for instance, who come in we have one client. She's a woman. She came in. She just retired. She had put her pension money into a project, but she didn't finish it. She built 18 units, and she has a shop in Soweto Protea Glen, and that's a food outlet shop. It sells the best dombolo ever. And in that shop, she's managed to employ her sister. Oh, nice. Her daughter does her financials. They stay in some of the units that they are thinking it. So they're resident landlords. And now she's looking to get into another project. She just bought another property, and she's coming back to us to build another multi-let unit. And stories like that are really what makes us. We've had some clients who unemployed, they had land in their family that wasn't being used, and they've built multi-let units, increased their value, made surplus income. I think uMaStandi, as I said, uMaStandi is a success story, generally.
And I think staying with, the success particularly of women, as you've just cited, somebody who's done well, that's actually this evening's fun fact in all things property. Simnikwe, as we wrap up, any final tips for our viewers at home, women or men alike, who are looking to tap into the property, whether they already have ekhaya and perhaps access funding from uMaStandi to build up, or looking to acquire land or, of course, another property where they want to then build some kind of development or accommodation, essentially. Any tips for them in terms of how they can make sure they get it right the first time and, of course, are able to secure the financing and have a really successful property journey?
Yeah. I think come to us, we'll help you. Try to work with an architect who can actually see, a professional who's going to see what the vision that you have, how it can be built and how we can realize it. Would we be able to realize it in the space that you have? Do research on the market. What are the rentals in the market? What's needed in the market? Are there young professionals? Are there young families? Really come to us. I think the most important thing, we do try to teach our entrepreneurs how to look at property, the basics, how to calculate the value of the property, and how to look at construction costs of what you want to build. So you can do a feasibility even on your own to try to see if this is a worthy investment for you to get into.
So do check it out. It's been shared down here in the comments section. You want to find out all about it. And I think it's testimony to what you can do. And it's certainly, especially when you look at the different ways to access different kinds of financing for township projects. I know that we often complain about, the difficulty of finding financing for projects in that specific demographic. So that's one avenue that you can look into. Simnikiwe, it's been such a pleasure to have you with us. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And that is Simnikwe Ntyantya, who's a credit analyst at uMaStandi, which is a member of Tuff 21. Well, from myself, uMaStandi, it has been a pleasure. We'll be back on your screens tomorrow evening. We've got a surprise tomorrow. You want to watch to find out what the surprise is. Until then, hoping you're staying home and staying safe.